Hi, my name is Anouk and I'm a customer success engineer at Deeploy. In this tutorial, I will show you what the functionalities are of a deployment within Deeploy. So let's get started. We press login and enter the team overview. From there, we can go into a specific workspace, and from the workspace, we can go into a specific deployment. This brings us to the deployment dashboard. The deployment dashboard is a summary of all the most important information about your deployment, which on the left shows you who's the owner, for example, and what is the risk classification. On the right, some deployment details, so which repositories linked and which model framework is used to train this model, for example. We can see a preview of the model card, a summary of the number of predictions in the last 24 hours, some quick links to the prediction logs, to test requests, and to integrate your deployment. And on the lower part, we can see which compliance documentation has been filled in for this deployment. Next up is the monitoring tab. Deeploy provides out-of-the-box monitoring for all external and managed deployments, and that consists of different categories. So we have traffic monitoring consisting of activity, errors, and response time. We can monitor the performance of the deployment as soon as actuals have been submitted for historical predictions. So we can monitor different metrics here. We can also monitor human feedback in case that is fed back to Deeploy from an external application. We can also monitor drift, for which we have different metrics that are monitored. So here you can see the feature drift for a specific feature. We can see the feature distribution, and we can also monitor on a input validation, also for a specific feature. In case you have specific KPIs that are not present in the standard monitoring graphs, we also allow you to set up your custom monitoring metrics. In this case, there is a bias metric, subgroup accuracy, which is used to monitor the accuracy on discovered subgroups within the data where this model is trained on. For each of those metrics, we can set alerts. This makes sure that you are always notified immediately once a model performs out of your defined boundaries. So what we can do here, so we set a new alert rule, for example, for accuracy. We select the metric. We can configure the severity level, and we want to be notified as soon as the model drops below 80% accuracy. We only want to be notified every 30 minutes when that happens, and we want the metric to be calculated on a window of 10 minutes. Also, we want to define the minimum sample size to receive alerts about. So in this case, I want to make sure that I have a minimum sample size of 20 actuals before I get notified. You can also select a webhook here. So in this case, I can make sure that the alerts are also sent to a Teams channel. All right, we have set up our alerts. So let's get to the next one, which is compliance. In the compliance tab, you can add your compliance documentation by either importing already existing documentation as PDF or use a template that is configured within the workspace and enable them here to make sure that your team members will fill in the questions that adhere to a specific compliance documentation template. So let's say we want to add one. We want to make sure that the EU AI Act record keeping template will be filled in. We add it, and we can now see that this template is added, which can be filled in here. Also, the progress of this template is tracked. The next part is the Manage tab, which contains different functionalities. On the details page, there's a lot of things you can configure. For example, who's the owner of the deployment. We can find the API endpoint that you can use to integrate this deployment and communicate with it via the API. We can find the model card that is provided and the data card that is provided for this deployment. On the repository, we can update our deployment. For example, when we have retrained our model, we want to select the newest commit. We go to the top and we can press update to update our deployment. Also, we can configure the model explainer and transformer here. So for example, change the CPU request and memory. And lastly, we can view the metadata. On the next part, we can see a version history of this deployment. The version history is an overview of all the versions that were once live of this deployment. Next up is the predictions tab, and here we can find all the historical predictions that were once made with this model. We can also view events, so activities that have been performed on this deployment. We can view the container logs to dive deeper into the inner workings of the containers that are deployed within this deployment. In this case, that's a model container and an explainer container. We can also find code snippets that can be used as example code to integrate this deployment to make sure to make requests to it from an external application. And to do that, we have to create a token, which you can do under authentication. And in this way, you can create this token to communicate safely with the deployment. Lastly, there's also a test page, which you can use to test making predictions, and in this case also explain them here, which looks all fine. In this tutorial, I showed you an overview of the functionalities of the deployment level within Deeploy. Thank you for watching and see you next time.